Hi, and welcome to Knit All the Things. My name is Laurel. I'm also known as West Maven on Instagram, Ravelry, and here. If you're new, this is a space where I talk about all the things I'm knitting, all the things I want to knit, all things yarn, just all the things. And if you're returning, welcome back, Knitting Bestie. I can't wait to catch up with you. In this week's episode, I have to share with you, it's been a creative few weeks. I have finished a hat, I finished a shawl, I cast on a brand new shawl, a new pattern. It has some purling, and you know what that means. It must be so good. I've also been working on my dream sweater. I've made some progress, and I can't wait to share that with you. So grab your knitting, get cozy, and let's go. Okay, so let's talk about what I'm wearing. I am wearing my Effervescent sweater. This is a pattern by Aimee Sherr, and it was featured in issue, I believe, 40 of Pom Pom magazine. I used Wandering Flock in their solo fingering and mohair in the colorway Cosmic Tie-Dye. And I really enjoyed knitting this sweater. It has a little bit of quite a bit of positive ease on me, which I don't think is a bad thing, but it was really funny because I didn't really remember it fitting this way. So when I threw it on today to start the podcast, I was like, oh, this is a little different than I remember. That being said, I think I would love to make a second one, but make it black. I think I would even actually keep the ruffle, which I was on the fence about to begin with. But I do think I would keep the ruffle and just knit it all in black and make it a little bit more fitted. This particular sweater is knit from the bottom up, and it was my very first ever bottom up sweater. I learned a lot of things. I would suggest if you are knitting a bottom up sweater for the first time, starting with the sleeves, because don't tell anyone. I sort of didn't swatch for this. I just knit a sleeve or part of a sleeve and then blocked it to see if I got gauged, because I was fairly confident I was going to be on gauge, but I just wanted to confirm with that. And so then I just did the other sleeve and then knit the sweater. So it felt very fast because the sleeves, being a smaller circumference, go by really quickly. And then just hopping over to the body, when you've got it all together, you're done. So it just felt like, wow, I've not had that kind of sense of accomplishment in the same way. And so for that reason, I really enjoyed this project. Let me share with you, we have a new co-host. His name is Bowie, and he's a little bit of a fluffy dog. Okay, so let me share with this with you. Let me stand up a little bit. There you go, Bo. So it does have a little bit of positive ease. It has this nice lace, and then you pick up and knit the ruffle. I do think my ruffle feels very stand outish, but I think just because I haven't worn it in a while, I think it kind of won't, I don't know. I think it would be a little less fluffy. Is that the right word? Once it's kind of worn a little bit, just because it would, I don't know, I think warm up and lay a little bit flatter. I will say when I first knit the ruffle, it was wild, and so it did help to block it to kind of like settle it down. I did not actually helical knit for the yarn. I just let it do its thing. So you have some pulling in the sleeves, but in the body, I feel like it's very consistent. Geraldine of Wandering Flock does such a wonderful job that I just feel like all of the yarn looked so exactly alike that I felt fine just doing it this way. It looks like I did a tubular, I guess, cast on, because it would have been bottom up on the cuffs and the hem. And there's twisted rib or a half twisted rib. And then, yeah, so that is my Effervescent Pullover by Aimee Sherr. And I just really love it. Okay, so I have so many things I'm so excited to share with you guys. Okay, so let's start with the finished objects. Over the previous weekend, Andrea Mowry of Drea Renee Knits hosted a knit along, the DRK Traveler Hat Cow, and it was just a time challenge. So can you knit a hat in 4 days? I think I knit this in 2.5 days, 2 days. And so I used my hand spun, and I really like how it turned out. I was really a little bit nervous on the fit because it is quite large, but it looks okay on. I'm trying to debate whether I should put it on or not. But it really did block nicely. So I was watching Abby of What I Knit, and I'll link her podcast below, but she felt like hers was a little large, and then she shrunk it in the dryer. And I did the same thing. I was probably really, like, I was there and just checked it like every minute because I was worried about it, just given it was hand spun. But it did okay. I think it looks fine. And I think it turned out okay. This isn't really my color. I guess I'll try it on for you guys, and then I'll just have to check my hair in a minute. But this would not be a color that I would knit anything out of for myself, but this particular braid was given to me by Art and Alchemy, along with an order that I had placed. She just threw in an extra braid, and I thought, oh, I'll just use it for practice. So when I'm still obviously learning to spin, but I wanted to see if I could like try to make a yarn that I wanted, like try to make it the Sport DK weight 2-ply, and I sort of did. I ended up knitting the pattern for the fingering size because it is so thick and thin, and I started using the yarn that was the thinnest on my thing, because I think when I first started I had a pretty thick yarn, and then it kind of got thinner as I was spinning. And so what I ended up doing was just starting from the kind of thinner side and using that. And I think that worked okay. And I think the overall hat looks really nice. Maybe my husband will wear it, although I don't think this is quite his color. But it overall was a great experience knitting this and using hand spun. I learned a lot about how my spinning will knit up. So I just learned a lot. It was a good learning experience. Whether or not I'm going to be like rocking this all the time, I don't think it's the worst color. It's just also not the best. So that is my traveler hat, a pattern by Andrea Mowry, using my hand spun. Again, it was Art and Alchemy braid, and it was a BFL. So there's that. Okay. Next up, I was knitting a shawl for my mother-in-law. She lives in Florida, and when she was visiting, I had asked her, I would like to knit you something, like, what would you be interested in? And she said, maybe something black. And so I had shown her this Joji Locatelli shawl that I had made previously called the Hipster Shawl. And this is made with Magpie Fibers Swanky Sock in the colorway Hell's Bells. And I really enjoyed making this. It was a really quick project. And so in my mind, I thought, oh, I'll make this for her. And then I thought about it a little bit more and thought, I kind of want to make a different pattern. And I had this pattern in my library, so I decided to make the Storm Shawl, which is another one skein project. I'm gonna see if I can decide which way's front and which way's back. I don't think I will know, but we'll just go with it. So this is the Storm Shawl, and I made it with Isager Trio 2, which has cotton, linen, and viscose. It's a really nice shawl. It has a picot bind off. I really think I like it a lot. I'm really tempted to just make one for myself. I just really like how it turned out. And you have basically just a bunch of garter and then these drop stitch areas. So I really like how it turned out. I figure it could be something that's kind of large enough to throw over your shoulders if you go into a cooler restaurant, or you just need, I don't know, traveling some places you need to have your shoulders covered to enter like different churches and whatever. So I just thought this was kind of a nice overall quick, easy project, a and just a nice shawl. I really like how it turned out. I ended up using 2 skeins of this Isager trio, and they are 175 meters each. And I couldn't even tell you what the yardage is for that. I do think that I ended up not knitting the last garter section as long. So you do a drop stitch section and then a garter section, and I believe this is supposed to be closer to this width, but I knew I was going to have to dip into my 3rd skein, and I just didn't really want to for that. So I just made that section a little bit shorter, which is kind of the nice thing about Joji's 1 skein patterns, is that you can kind of customize them to like the yarn that you have. So I thought that was really nice. I wanted to share that with you, so now I can ship it off to her. There's not really a special occasion that that was made for, other than I just wanted to make her something. So that is my storm shawl pattern by Joji Locatelli using Isager's Trio 2. And again, it really turns out so nicely once it's blocked. I feel like when you're making a shawl, especially the 1 skein ones, once you can actually really block it out, it really grows so nicely and it makes a pretty good size shawl. And I also like how this one, where the pattern, the drop stitches pattern and the like eyelets are kind of not just uniform, but kind of, they're closer together on this side, and then they get wider stripes over here. I just really like that. It adds a nice thing. It's not so uniform, which I guess isn't necessarily mean boring, but it could. I like that you use some short rows to kind of skew it a little bit, and I think it really makes it look super nice. In between this podcast and the last podcast, Isang Knits released a shawl pattern, and it's called the Audria Shawl, and she's been teasing this for, I feel like it's been months. It's probably not been months, but it's been a long time in my mind. And her version, and I'll pop it in probably here, her version is gray and blue, and she used La Biche and Bouche. I don't know. I'll pop that down below. But she used this yarn, and I think this was a collaborative project to make this shawl. And what drew me in was a couple of things. I really love that the edge of the shawl has a scalloped edge. I think that's really beautiful, and it kind of mirrors the color work section of the shawl. I'm gonna do my best to show this. It's kind of really cramped on the needles right now, but I decided to cast it on, like, I think the day it came out, and I think I probably knit all of like this stockinette section before the, maybe even one color work, the like day 1, because I was so excited. But it has color work, it has lace, and then it has that beautiful scalloped edge, and I really, really enjoyed it. This, I decided to go to my stash and see what I had, because of course I wanted to cast it on like immediately. And I chose kind of a mishmash of yarns. So I chose for my main color, during the pandemic, Knitting for Olive actually had mohair on cones. It was a very short-lived thing, but I think they weren't able to put them in balls, so they had sold cones. So this is a colorway Powder. It's kind of a like very light pink gold. I would say gold leaning pink, warmer than cooler. And then I used Qing Fibers Yak Silk single, or I'm sorry, Yak single in Moody 3. And this yarn has like blush and sand and maybe a denim color, some rust orange. It's kind of a very muted but very colorful yarn. And I will say, once I started knitting the main color with that mohair, I had a moment of panic where I thought, oh my God, I am going to need to stop knitting this right now and make an entire sweater. I don't know if you've ever done that before where you're like, oh, this is so good. And I'm such a yarn hoarder sometimes that I'm like, should this be a sweater? Like I had initially thought I would make it a sweater and then I just haven't yet. And so I thought I would use it for this project. And I had a moment of like, oh, I should just save it for that sweater, that perfect project. And I thought, Laurel, you have enough yarn to make so many sweaters. Like if you wanted a fingering weight / mohair sweater, you've got it. So use the yarn. Like I got excited about this and so just use it. So I had a few different options. I was gonna do a maybe brighter contrast color or a blue, but I landed on this combo and I'm really happy that I did. So the second color, the contrast color, is the fingering weight is by Lola Bean Yarn, and it's the coffee bean yarn, and it's in the colorway Name Me. So it is a superwash merino yak nylon, and it has 437 yards, and it's just such a pretty dark red. And then I used yarn Nouveau and their silk mohair, and it is the color Black Coral. So I thought these two went really, really well together and really nicely with the main color. And I'm really happy with my color choices. I have really enjoyed making this. I actually have been trying really hard to work on this and also work on my dream sweater because I want them both to be done. But I've been gravitating towards grabbing this over the other just because I've had so much fun knitting it. It's really good cadence of different things. Like you're tired of the stockinette, now you have color work. You're tired of the color work, which is only a few rows really. And then you go right into lace. And then you're like, okay, well, I've had enough of that. Now you're back to color work. Now you're back to stockinette. So there's so much changing throughout. It's very much like knitting a stripe. And so it goes by really quickly. There's 3 of these sections. So I've completed 1. I've started my second one. So that kind of gives you an idea of where I'm at with this one. But I really think it's so pretty. It's not really weather appropriate right now, but I had to cast it on. And I kind of thought that. I was like, oh, should I be casting on a warm yak mohair shawl right now? I mean, yes, I had to cast it on, but it isn't the most practical to like wear right now. But I am thoroughly enjoying it. I think you could happily knit it in air conditioning and not worry about the mohair because I know the temperatures are getting warmer, but it will definitely be something that won't be worn until much later in the year. The next up, I have my dream sweater. This is the Pina Colada sweater. It is a pattern by Laura Zuckate. It appeared in Pom Pom magazine. I can put the issue because I just don't remember. But since the magazine print copy, unless you can find it in a local store, isn't available, you can find it on Ravelry or on their website still, and I think probably soon, if not now, it may be available as a single pattern. But this is a intarsia project, as you can tell with all the bobbins, and you basically always hold on to your main color, which is Isager Alpaca 1 in the colorway 30, so it's their black. And then you pick up and drop the contrasting color, which I'm using yarn Nouveau in the colorway Sapphire in their sport base. So I feel like every time I pick this up and show it on here, I start to panic because I'm like, gosh, this looks so wide. But I also know that it can stretch quite a bit lengthwise. So I have to keep reminding myself that. But this is the progress I've made. I was feeling a little bit down on myself because I was very excited to cast this on. And while I am enjoying it, and I'm much more enjoying the process now than I was at first. At first, I was feeling very frustrated with myself. Like, did I cast on something that's way too hard for me to do? Am I like making a giant mistake? Like, this isn't gonna turn out, like all these things, right? And I've noticed that it is okay, one, if those things are true. That would be okay too, right? But I am feeling more and more confident. I'm also feeling more confident in the intarsia because I really think that I, one, overcomplicated it, but two, you do have sections where you have half as many bobbins because of the diamond. So anytime your diamond is meeting at the top or the bottom of the diamond, you don't have as many bobbins, which actually is quite often enough where it feels a lot less overwhelming. I will say one thing I have kind of learned about this process is I should load up the bobbins when I'm needing to replace the yarn, because then I'm having to do like that kind of monotonous work a little less. So all of those things, I think it's been a learning process. This isn't my first intarsia project, but it is my most kind of quote unquote complicated and intense. But I do think because the pattern is easily memorizable and you're just knitting practically a square at first, that you don't really need the pattern. Like I can read my knitting, I know what's coming next, and that is all easy. It's just the sitting down and making that work. I will say when I got this dog that I was a little bit nervous that he was gonna attack my bobbins, but he has actually been a very good knitting companion at night and not gotten into too much trouble. The next thing I wanted to talk about was what's next. So because I have kind of two more complicated projects, I finished my shawl. Oh, actually, let's talk about this really quick. Last week, I had talked about fixing my husband's sock. So I had knit these for him. I don't remember why, but maybe for no reason. But I had knit these for him and I gave them to him, and then I looked probably a month or two later and was like, is that a giant, like his foot was coming out of the hole. And I was like, let me fix those for you, but next time, maybe before there's a hole, let me know and I will fix it easier. But anyway, because these are heel flap and gusset, and it was like right at the heel part that these had a bad rip, I decided to just do some sock surgery, cut off basically the foot, and then redo the heel, or the part of the heel. I was actually able to pick up the heel flap and then just start from the heel turn and the gusset. So that's basically what I did. And what I decided to do for the heel turn to reinforce, I bought a long time ago some reinforcement thread, and I do think you'll be able to see it. Ciao, bub. So I ended up using this like gold thread because that was the thing in my knitting that I kind of repair stuff that I had that was closest to this color that I felt would camouflage. And it did, I think, a pretty good job. I haven't like reblocked these or anything, so they do look a little bit messy, but it worked out. And I think that once they're blocked, this will all like lay nicely and my tension won't matter. Part of the yarn I used, which I shouldn't probably have done, was some of the yarn that I had unraveled from the sock when I was doing the surgery, but it seemed like it was in good condition. It wasn't like thin or anything once I got rid of the hole. So I decided just to use it, and then I needed a little bit more, so then I went to go find the yarn and finish it off. But I did finish these, or fix them. The pattern, I believe, was based off of Summer Lee's I'm So Basic Sock, which is a free pattern. She also has tutorials on YouTube, which is great, and it really is an easy, great beginner sock pattern. I highly recommend. And she also has a book now, so go check that out. It's called The Sock Project, and I can link that below. But the yarn I used was Qing Fibers, I believe the colorway Narwhal, and I don't know if it's available, but it's out of the BFL High Twist sock yarn. Now, let's talk about future projects. So, because I have those kind of more complicated knits going on right now, I have a couple of things going. I have been working on my half and half triangles wrap. I'm doing it in super orange and I think bright flamingo. And if you're not familiar with what that looks like, I brought my one that I've finished down. It's basically a giant square, 2 triangles together in 2 different colors. And I use this as a like throw or a blanket most of the time, more than a wrap. But I have kind of picked this up and have been working on it a little bit more. For whatever reason, it's not my favorite thing to pick up right now. But sometimes you just need a little like just knitting, and that is great for that. So I've had this Knitting for Olive pure silk in the colorway Coal Forever. Well, forever since probably since last summer. And I've been wanting to make something out of it. I initially had thought the Cumulus blouse, which has a V-neck, and I didn't really want to do the purling part of the V-neck. And so I've been hesitant to cast it on. And I'm kind of glad that was the case, because she came out with the O-neck version, which I believe the V-neck isn't yet size inclusive, but the O-neck version is. And I thought, oh, I'll definitely knit that. And then she came out with a new pattern called the Aimee T. And I think that's actually the one that I'm going to purchase and go with for a couple of reasons. I like the raglan creases of the T over the blouse. The blouse raglan creases are against one stitch, so it's a very thin kind of raglan line, and I think that's fine, but it is not exactly, I think, what I'm picturing. The Aimee T is a striped pattern, and it has a very definitive raglan, and it does still have that like crew neck, if you will, and I just think I'm gonna like it better. I haven't seen anyone do, because it is such a new pattern, a one color version, but I thought it might be a nice pattern to get, because if I want to re-knit it in the future, because I often like to re-knit patterns, the stripe version might be like exciting. So that's kind of what I had in mind with this, and I do want to cast that on soon, just so I have a very like solid stockinette project to work on. And yeah, so that is kind of my plan for this yarn. Please hold me to it, because I keep wanting to knit with it, but then I get distracted by these amazing shawl patterns that come out. I will say also with the Audria Shawl, just one more kind of thing. There is a lot of purling, but I think in my knitting journey, purling isn't so bad anymore. I think I have realized like when too much purling is too much, and I'm able to actually like give myself breaks and take time and not spend a lot of time only on that project and then having my hands hurt. So I'm definitely a little bit more aware of how my hands and my body are feeling, and I'm also a little bit more aware of this mailman just went by and both dogs like perked up, but maybe they won't bark, we'll see. But I am much more aware of how my hands and my body feel while I'm knitting, and so to protect my hands and my body, I definitely have either where I will switch to a different project or do something else. So I think that will be a good stockinette project for me. I will get to use the yarn that I've been wanting to use for a very long time, and I will have a nice little black tee to wear. I am right now trying to decide how much positive ease that I want in this garment, because after putting this on today, I like this pattern a lot and there's nothing wrong with the pattern, but I probably could have gone down a size. And I feel like in the past, for sure, I always like overcompensate and always go larger rather than smaller. And I think part of that has to do with, I used to be a super, super tight knitter. And so I think I was just like always worried it's going to be too small or not fit or be uncomfortable. But I really need to be realistic and take into consideration like all of those things. So I'm knitting something that will look nice and not sloppy. So that's kind of been on my mind on what size to choose in knitting that project. If you have any thoughts on that. I don't think you'll hurt my feelings, but let me know, because I do feel like oftentimes I am pretty oversized and I could probably on the tee go a little bit smaller, and just keep in mind maybe trying it on before I split for sleeves to make sure I'm getting enough comfortable ease, like underarm and stuff. So that's something that I'm trying to like process and think about. So it's been a few weeks, and in those few weeks, you guys had sent so many nice messages. I had lost my grandma, and I really appreciate all those very kind comments. With that, I think I've had like all of these little things where I'm trying to like keep that memory alive and connect. And one thing that I kind of dabbled in the last few weeks was some quilt stuff. I'm not going to go into great detail, but I do think I will share a couple of little pieces that I've made. One really cool thing about my grandma, she was involved with Project Lioness, and they make quilts for babies in hospitals or for shelters or different things. So they make all these quilts and then they deliver them to people in need or ICU babies or all those things. So I always thought that was really nice, and quilting was like her major passion. I would say knitting's mine, but quilting was hers. And so I grabbed some fabric and have dabbled in English paper piecing, mostly because I didn't want to do something with a knit. I have a sewing machine. I just didn't really want to use it. I just wanted to sit and do something with my hands. And so, again, talking about thinking about your body in different modes and in different creative spaces, I did realize that I can make maybe really sew maybe 2, and then I need to take a break because I don't want to like that. This motion is going to be very different than knitting, and it's putting different strain on different muscles in my hands. Now, I also feel that you can build those muscles, but you do need to just practice and do it in safe ways. So I just have been messing around and enjoying it. And I think this one's my favorite one so far. But I think eventually it'll just be like a pillow to hang out with us. So that's all. I just wanted to share that because I was enjoying it. At my at the local sewing store, I guess, they had kits where they had kits with the fabric and the papers and the pattern all in like a kit. Or you could just buy the pattern and the papers in a smaller thing and just kind of mess around. So that's what I did, just because I didn't want to commit to like an entire huge project in case this is not the thing for me. Like this is all, this is my big box of quilting supplies, which is not that big, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. I hope at some point maybe I can get a little bit of the fabric that my grandma had just so I can make something special with it, but we'll see. So that's kind of been my other little creative outlet. And beyond that, we got a new family member. This is Bowie. He's 6 months old and he's very cute. I'll put a picture because I don't think you can see his little face. But he has one blue eye and one brown eye. He, I think, is part Pomeranian, part Schnauzer. And my grandma and I, when I was in my 20s, shared a Pomeranian. I had gotten her, but I was a flight attendant. And so anytime I had a work trip, my dog would go to my grandparents' house and they would hang out with her. And then after my grandpa died, my grandma kind of hung on to her because she needed that companionship. So I wanted another little Pomeranian yippy dog in my life. And let me tell you, he's here. He definitely is a little bit yippy. His name is Bowie, and he's getting along pretty well with my other dog, Danzig, for the most part. Danzig's a little annoyed that he has to share his humans, but I think he is also enjoying having a little bit of a furry friend around. So it's been fun watching them, but it's also, he's 6 months, but that to me is still a puppy, so I haven't had that puppy energy around in 8 years or so, 7 or 8 years. So it's been a while and I've forgotten much like when you have a baby and you've forgotten how hard it can be. So I've forgotten how nice and also how much into things puppies are. Okay, so for now, I think that is basically, we're all caught up with each other. I do want to hear what you guys think. I am toying with the idea of either doing these more often. So instead of every 2 weeks, either every week or something like that. But I also really enjoy doing other videos. So my last kind of other video was the 15 patterns for spring and summer that might be fun to knit. They're size inclusive patterns and I'll link that video. But I've been enjoying doing those to kind of balance out the podcast. Let me know what you think if you enjoy those kind of type of list type of videos, and I would appreciate it. So other than that, I've just been doing audiobooks and trying to catch up on shows. I'm gonna start Bridgerton, so don't spoil it, but I think that one's next. Okay, so until 2 weeks from now, if we're not yet knitting besties, make sure to hit that subscribe button and like this video because it tells YouTube that other fiber enthusiasts like yourself enjoy this type of content. Until 2 weeks from now, make some yarn magic. Bye!